In the previous video we found out what each Straw Hat thinks about Luffy. But what about Luffy? What does he think about each of the Straw Hats? At what point did Luffy declare what he thinks about them? That's what we're going to see in this video, and if you're curious, follow me, leave a like. I'm Lucas and you're in the anime ranking. Zoro. As the first member of the gang, Luffy has a special affection for Zoro. They have had a relationship of complete trust since the moment Zoro joined the gang. An example of this is when Luffy risks his life to save Kobe while leaving his life in Zoro's hands, so that he can finish off Morgan, who would have gone before delivering his final blow. Furthermore, Luffy has full confidence in Zoro's strength and abilities. Generally, he trusts that Zoro will always defeat his enemies. Even in very dangerous battles, Luffy fully trusts that Zoro will be able to handle the situation, even if he is extremely worried about him. Luffy also knows that Zoro will follow all his orders, even if most of them are stupid or pointless. But because of his deep trust in Luffy, Zoro follows his orders. Even against his will, he followed Luffy to rescue Nami, saved Smoker's life even though he was an enemy, and even beat up Bellamy when Luffy wouldn't fight back. Luffy also respects and accepts Zoro's various opinions, almost as if Zoro were the reason for the gang, a reason that Luffy usually doesn't have. But he's also Luffy's pillar of support when the going gets tough. When Luffy almost couldn't take the pressure of being captain anymore after defeating USOPP, Zoro gave him the strength to stand firm, because if he falters, the gang has nothing to rely on in times of crisis. He also preached respect for Luffy, even though he was an idiot, when he demanded that USOPP had to apologize properly before returning to the gang, and Luffy himself accepted his opinion. But he's also the one who reprimands Luffy when he needs to, like when he lost to Caesar, declaring that he shouldn't falter again, since this is the beginning of the new world. It's because he trusts in Zoro's strength that Luffy can go on and fight the strongest enemies. In the end, he knows that Zoro will always win. But he also knows that Zoro will do anything to save him if he finds himself in a desperate situation. When Luffy was trapped and about to be killed by Buggy, Zoro went to his rescue and even carried Luffy in a metal cage, at a time when they had just met, and even though he had been injured by Buggy. He also fought against Kuma to protect his captain, and was willing to sacrifice his life for him. Nami. Nami was the second member of the gang, even though she initially only cooperated with them. Even though she betrayed the gang and stole the Going Merry, Luffy went to her island to bring her back. What's more, he trusted Nami completely from the start, entrusting her with his greatest treasure, his straw hat. And she was still extremely upset when Johnny said that she had killed the USOPP with her bare hands. Even after Nami told him directly that they had never been friends, and that she was only interested in their money, Luffy didn't believe her. He trusted until the end, and only acted after Nami herself asked for help. Nami plays the role of a mother to the Mugiwaras, if they were a traditional family. That's why she usually spanks Luffy when he steps out of line. But usually, when she's serious or makes a request, Luffy always complies. When she asked him not to get into trouble in Mock Town, Luffy beat Bellamy without fighting back. In the same way, Luffy always acts to protect Nami from danger. Just as he climbed a 5,000-meter mountain so that she and Sanji would get proper treatment. After the time skip, Nami not only acts as moral support, but also fights effectively in battles where she can be support for Luffy. One example was when she was dipping the cracker cookies for Luffy to eat. As I mentioned earlier, the two are extremely close. To the point where Nami will correct Luffy whenever she needs to, but they still diverge greatly when it comes to the route of the journey. Nami always wants to take the safest route, while Luffy prioritizes fun and adventure, so he always wants to take the most dangerous route. In addition, Luffy fully trusts Nami's abilities as a navigator, and is proud of how incredible she is. No matter what the conditions or events, he will always rely on his navigator's abilities to sail the ship through the most terrible seas. His confidence in Nami is such that, of all the Mugiwaras, she is the one he trusts most to carry his straw hat at various times. USOPP. As the third member of the crew, USOPP and Luffy have such a close relationship that they seem to be brothers. Even though USOPP is cowardly and weak, the extreme opposite of Luffy, he doesn't care about his weaknesses, but rather his strengths. What's more, USOPP and Luffy are part of the prankster trio along with Chopper, so the two get on very well, as if they really were brothers. What's more, Luffy really admires what a good shot USOPP is. Not to mention his talent for invention, adding new technologies from different islands over time. The two of them have a deep admiration for the giants, to the point where they promise to go to the land of the giants, Elbaf, one day. As a brother would normally do, Usopp also takes Luffy seriously at various times. When he proclaims himself captain of the ship, tries to redesign the gang's flag, or even wants to spoil the adventure they're about to have, Luffy becomes extremely angry with him. Like brothers, Luffy and Usopp fight. They had a nasty fight when the gang was about to change ships. Luffy initially didn't want to leave the Going Merry at all, but was convinced that this was the best course of action. But Usopp didn't want to understand that, even though deep down he already knew the truth. After the battle between the two, Luffy was extremely sad to have to defeat his friend and leave him behind, declaring that it had been fun while they sailed together. Luffy even cried afterwards. After all, they were like brothers. But Luffy was also extremely happy to hear that Usopp was planning to return to the gang, and when he apologized from the bottom of his heart, Luffy reached out and forgave his great friend and brother. Luffy is also overprotective of Usopp. He doesn't accept in any way that anyone laughs at the effort and dedication of his companions, especially Usopp, who is labeled as weak. He loses all composure when he sees someone humiliate or beat up Usopp, and has even blown up the FRANKY family out of anger. But he also has complete faith in Usopp's skills as a marksman. When Usopp says he can handle a situation, Luffy just watches as he sorts it out. He proved this when he managed to capture Caesar on the run from Punkhazard. Sanji. In the Baratai, Luffy was looking for a cook for his ship. At first, any of the cooks could have taken the position. But of all of them, the skill that most caught Luffy's attention in the perfect cook for his ship was not his cooking skills, but his kindness. The moment Luffy saw Sanji feeding a hungry man, he knew that this was the perfect cook for his ship. What's more, Sanji proved to Luffy that he was strong from his very first mission with the gang, where he slaughtered one of the Arlong's commanders like it was nothing. Luffy also has extreme confidence in Sanji on the battlefield. He knows that he can go all out without thinking about the consequences, that Sanji will save him whenever possible. We have several examples of such moments, such as him saving Luffy from drowning in Baratai in Arlong Park, carrying a tired Luffy after a clash with Big Mom, and taking Luffy back to the ship after the fight against Katakuri. Luffy also loves Sanji's food, so much so that he vowed never to eat again unless it was Sanji's food. He also has a completely different view of Sanji, which turns his faults into virtues in Luffy's view. He also fully trusts Sanji's strength, declaring that picking him up in Big Mom's territory would be a great addition of power to the Alliance's side against Kaido. Even knowing this strength, Luffy decided not to fight his friend, since all of Sanji's attacks had no effect on him. After all, he knew that it was Sanji who was suffering the most at that moment. Chopper. Chopper was the fifth member to join the crew. Because he is still very young and childish, Luffy sees him as a younger brother. At the same time, Chopper sees him as an older brother and is inspired by Luffy for many things, including bad things like being a clown by trying to imitate Luffy. They both have a childish mentality, so they are easily fooled and are extremely happy to see things that boys like, such as ninjas, robots and real heroes. Chopper, Luffy and Usopp are also part of the gang's mischievous trio. From the start, Luffy thought Chopper was cool, as he had never seen a talking reindeer before, and he was ecstatic when he discovered that Chopper could access countless other forms to fight. Being an exotic and incredible creature, Luffy wanted Chopper in the gang from the start, plus he can serve as a snack in case they run out of food. It was this connection that Luffy established with Chopper that made him want to sail the seas and help Luffy realize his dream. What's more, Chopper has freed himself from his monster bonds. Nowadays, he doesn't mind looking like a monster if that's what it takes to help make Luffy's dream come true. What's more, Luffy has full confidence in his doctor's medicinal abilities. So much so that he doesn't mind getting hurt or infected by a virus, knowing that Chopper can easily find a cure. In fact, Luffy has so much confidence in Chopper that it's like he's a miracle worker. But there are still things he can't do. After all, his dream is to find a cure for all the world's diseases. But Luffy is convinced that anyone who comes under Chopper's care will surely be cured, or at least have their illness alleviated, if there is no cure. Robin. Luffy initially disliked Robin when she was still part of the Barrack Works. At Whisk Peak, she tries to help the Straw Hats reach Alabasta safely, but Luffy takes this as an offense to the captain, and declares that the ship will only go in the direction he orders. He only began to sympathize with her the second time she saved him. Then he decided to save her life after defeating Crocodile in the collapse of the secret chamber, even though she wanted to die for good. Later, she appears in the Going Merry asking to join the gang, since Luffy forced her to continue living. As Luffy no longer had anything against her, and knew she was a good person, he let her join the gang. Luffy's relationship with Robin is one of the healthiest in the gang. He feels comfortable doing his crazy things around her without fear of being slapped. Unlike Nami, Robin finds Luffy's crazy ways funny and is used to the mess he makes. Luffy also fully trusts her loyalty and would never believe that she could really hurt someone for no reason. From the start, he trusted that Robin was innocent in the iceberg incident, and he didn't believe her when she declared that she had betrayed the gang and was no longer part of the crew. He even went so far as to defy her and declare war on the whole world, just so that Robin could, for once in her life, declare what she really felt. Then she could free herself from the bonds of her past and shout that she really wanted to live, that she wanted to sail the seas with the Mugiwaras. Luffy also has Robin as a good advisor. Because of her vast knowledge, she opened his eyes about how a pirate alliance always ends in betrayal, and how the power of a Yonko is absurd for Luffy to go against. But she's also capable of making complicated matters easy for Luffy to understand, like making him remember the milestone by giving the example of his head looking like a pineapple. Luffy is also proud of her archaeological skills. As she is the only woman in the world capable of reading the poneglyphs, Luffy has always declared that he would fight anyone to protect his friend, Franky. Initially, Luffy was angry with Franky for being the head of the organization that attacked his companion. For this reason, the two even went head-to-head, which was later interrupted. But Franky earned Luffy's respect after all his efforts to save Robin in Enies lobby. He also built the Sunny Go, and was exactly the carpenter the gang needed. After that, he began to respect Luffy and represented the figure of an older brother to him. A lot of this led Franky to modify his body even more during the time skip, to become stronger and more technological to see how Luffy and the others would react to his super new body. Luffy has full confidence in Franky and his strength. He's so important to Luffy that he was even considered eating the Mera no Mi, his brother Ace's fruit. But Franky refused because he wanted to continue with his swimming ability. Luffy trusts Franky's construction skills completely. He usually leaves everything related to it to him, with the statement that if Franky says he'll fix it, he definitely will. But he also knows how capable Franky is in battle, with all his technological gadgets and inventions like the Franky Shogun. He even put one of the Yonko on his guard when he prepared his laser. Brook. As with Chopper, Luffy was extremely happy to meet a creature as exotic as a talking skeleton, so he didn't hesitate to ask Brook if he shits, and call him into the gang. Even though Brook refused his request, Luffy was determined to make him one of his companions. So he fought with all his might to recover Brook's shadow and give him a new destiny. It was Luffy who told him how the Laboon was doing and that it was still waiting for the twin cables, information that made Brook feel at ease about joining the gang and continuing his journey. Luffy has full confidence in Brook's abilities. He knows that at opportune moments he will cheer up the gang with his music, but he will also fight with all his might to win their battles. Luffy also has Brook as a joke partner at various times, as he makes skull jokes that Luffy can't stop laughing at. JINBE. JINBE is one of the members that Luffy trusts the most. From the moment they first met, Luffy believed in his intentions even though he didn't know him. Besides, all of Luffy's actions have made JINBE care about him to the point of risking his life to save his own. Even as acquaintances, JINBE was Luffy's reason at a time when he just wanted to disappear. But then he remembered what he hadn't lost yet and stood up to continue his journey and meet his companions again. This bond with JINBE only grew over time, to the point where Luffy invited him to join the gang. When JINBE finally joined the crew, he still couldn't sail with everyone. But as a member of the gang, Luffy gave him his first order: even if you die, don't die. He was only reunited with everyone in Wano, which made Luffy extremely happy to have another companion. With all his experience, JINBE acts more like an advisor. I would even say that his role is that of a father, if the Mugiwaras were a traditional family. He has come to act as Luffy's advisor, and has been able to make him understand situations and ways of acting. Luffy can rely on JINBE to make alliances that he wouldn't normally make, but he's also able to keep Luffy in line so that he can talk to other pirates.